Okay. We left off Chav Beis, page 236. Now we're going to speak about the size of the esrog. Shir esrog koton. What is the smallest size of an esrog to be valid? Hochsen michbei apostle. If the esrog is smaller than an egg, it's possible. Avaluhu kebeyo. But if it's the size of an egg, afilum hu boser shadayin lo nigba pirio kosher. Even though it's unripened, it's not fully developed, it's valid. Vim hoyagodol koshu kosher. We'll see in a moment. Which means we'll see Rashi, the Mishna Berura. Meaning it's so large that you carry it on your shoulder. That's how large it is. It's valid. We'll see in a moment. Yeah. We'll see. We'll discuss. It's not al-Chatchil, it's a b'di'evid. It's a b'di'evid. Let's see the Mishna Berura. Second. No, we left off. We left the Mishna Berura yesterday. We spoke about the various characteristics of the esrog. So we cited the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer says although there are certain characteristics which indicate that it's a kosher species, that it's the pedigree of the esrog, but he says, nevertheless, when you purchase it, you should purchase it from a person who's trustworthy, that he can be trusted that it is the original species. So he explained, we left over with the Genoa esrogim that are imported from Genoa. Kol esrogim she'enim miyanova v'uadin mokom acher hamurze b'kashes b'yom kadmonim. Or any other location where that location, that region, it's established that the esrogim there are definitely the original species. Ein likach b'liksav hechsher. Anywhere else you should have to have a document of certification to indicate that it's the original species, that it's not crossbred. She'udea meid she'enim mulkovim. That the person who's attesting to the fact, he knows factually that it has been crossbred. You shouldn't rely on these outer characteristics of the esrog. This is Chassam Sofer. But he says the second the Yom Tiv, which is only rabbinical, even if you're of the opinion that a murkav, because it's a sveka diyoma, there's a whole question, that the second day, because you're not taking the right species, right? If it's another species, a person wants to take a lemon on the second day Yom Tov. It's not even a consideration. So if you say a crossbred esrog is like a lemon, so then you can't take it on the second day, right? You're not taking the right species, right? The whole idea is Zechul HaMikdash. Why do we take it all 7 days? It's to commemorate, because in the Beis HaMikdash, the mitzvah on a Torah level was for 7 days. So, but it has to be the right species. So he says the second day, which is only rabbinical, you could rely on the outer characteristics that if it has the form and all the profile of the original species, it's sufficient to rely on that. He says even if you have the document certification, there's much to be careful. Aleph, firstly, firstly, who signs on that document of certification? Who's attesting to the fact? Do you know who the man is? Or at least the merchant, the esrog merchant, he should know who the person is. And he's a trustworthy person. Remember, there was once somebody gave some kind of certification for a restaurant in Manhattan, like I mentioned names, and nobody knew who he was. His name wasn't even listed in the telephone book. In the window, it said a certain rabbi. Greener Pastures once had his name. He gave the hechsher on Greener Pastures. It was a dairy restaurant on the east side, if you remember. So the restaurant was open on Shabbos. So the question is, I mean, the restaurant's open Shabbos, so how do you know what goes on Shabbos? During the week, you see what's going on there. They're cooking, doing everything on Shabbos, but the restaurant is kosher. So everybody tried to locate the man. Nobody was ever able to locate the person. You know, it's that kind of hechsher. So he says, even if you have the document with somebody signed on it, you have to know who the person is. You know, who says the person is trustworthy. Beis al esrogim she'eno muzokim mikvar bekashis loed she'en murkovim. Lazein lahamin lameid rakim murzak bekashus. Tzor she'yirei shamayim ledagdek dulimiti katoy ubefrap lech sanitiyah. You know, it's not so simple. Do you know factually that it's not crossbred? No. I presume it's not. It looks like. And people say many things as if they know, but they really don't know. There's much deception in this area. Hear this? You know, you have the document certification, you got one letter. And you take that letter and you apply to another esrog. You know, it's an authentic document. But the question is, you know, you have these people, they collect for something. One person does his round, he gives the document to the next collector. And, you know, he uses that to collect. So maybe originally when it was issued, it was a valid document. But for the other person, it has no relevance. Therefore, you have to be careful to purchase the esrog from a trustworthy person. If you purchase it, it comes from a certain region where it's factually, they're not crossbred from that location. I said originally, Moroccan esrogim were never crossbred. Today, it's not as simple as it used to be. Let's say you already purchased the esrog. Or there are no regions which definitely, you know, it's interesting. You know, Hasidim, like especially the Hasidic Rebbes, they wear a talus called the Turkish talus. You ever hear it? You ever see it? It's a very, no. It's a very coarse. It's not a refined wool. It's a very, if you look at the wool, the way it's woven, it's a very coarse type talus. Why do Hasidic Rebbes wear this? Because it was a known fact. In Turkey, they did not grow flax. Flax did not grow in Turkey. They didn't plant it for whatever reason. So any woolen garment that came from Turkey was definitely did not have shatnez in it. There was no intermingling wool and linen. It was a fact. So because people were concerned, you never know. Even as much as you check, you never know. So therefore, the talesim they would wear were from Turkey. They were known as Turkish talesim. Okay, for that reason. So he says, there's certain regions it's known, if the esrog comes from that region, it definitely is not crossbred. So if you have you have that access, you should definitely buy from that location. But he said, if you don't, okay, if you have two indicators, outer indicators, meaning let's say it would be bumpy and elongated, right? That's two outer characteristics that it's the species of the esrog. But let's say it's smooth-skinned and it's round, right? It looks like a lemon. The only thing it has a pitum, and it has an ukitz on it, right? And the ukitz is not indented. So what do you have? It's a problem. So that's not sufficient. And some you have the ukitz is not indented. It has a pitum, and it's as round and as smooth as a lemon. You can't use it. It's not enough. According to me, he says you have to have minimally two outer characteristics which indicate that it's the species of the esrog. No, if you purchase it, it's reliable. It's reliable. He said where you don't have the reliable source. You go to the market and you buy esrogim. The Achronim, they rule that even the subsequent days, not only the second day, you should be machmir not to use a murkav. V'im ein lo acha beir, shlitlo kol shiva b'lo brocha. If the only esrog you have is the murkav, is the crossbred esrog, you take it throughout Yom Tov, one should not say a bracha on it. Because it's not the species. Because if we're concerned, the Gemara in Shabbos speaks about this situation. If you allow people to use this kind of esrog, what happens if you come to the year where you're able to purchase the real species? You say, well, we've been using this for years. This is sufficient, but it's not. Doesn't make. But people, once you get used to a certain type of species, people say, this is good enough. It's good. You don't have to do better, even though the better quality becomes accessible. he says there's some say even without a bracha, it's not worthwhile, not even to get involved, because ultimately it could lead to not good things. Many years ago, in New York, there was a problem. People carried in Manhattan without an Eruv. There was no Eruv, period. Not even the Eruv that they have today, whether they were lying. Why? Because before World War II, there was an L on 2nd Avenue, and it was called 2nd Avenue L. And literally, it was a question of whether it was a valid Tzuras HaPesach. The structure was similar to like a doorway, and it went around the city. So therefore, in the 30s, most women from observant families took their children on baby carriages on Shabbos. They carried their keys, everything else on Shabbos. Before World War II, they demolished it. They took it down. They took down the 2nd Avenue L. So people carried. People wanted to learn it, especially in those years. They knew you're permitted to carry in Manhattan. So in the 40s and the 50s, they continued. People continued when in the street. We're talking about full Shomer Shabbos people. On the Lower East Side, people took their children out in the street in baby carriages and carried whatever they carried. The keys to their apartments, they walked in the street. Why? Because originally, so the many communities afterwards were concerned that because of this problem, people not knowing and understanding what the halacha is, it's better not to have an Eruv in the community. Because people, they're in one community, they go to another community where there is no Eruv, so they're going to carry, because in this community they carry, say, look, you're permitted to carry on Shabbos. Not knowing that the reason why they're carrying is because there's an Eruv and they won't be able to differentiate. Okay? So therefore, there were many communities that were opposed, they would not have an Eruv. Would not have an Eruv. So, but today, the word, like at one time, there was a person, there was a Shatnez laboratory on Lee Avenue in Williamsburg. A Holocaust survivor established the Shatnez laboratory. His name was Rosenberg, Oliver Shalom. This Rosenberg, until he opened this lab, Shatnez lab, after World War II, it was I think in 1950, 51, the word Shatnez was almost unheard of in the United States. People bought suits. Very few people, if a person wanted to have a suit chest Shatnez, he would take it to his tailor and something else, and even then it wasn't so simple. Because people, to be able to identify what it was and what it wasn't simple. In Europe, people had the tailors who made the suits. They were custom-made suits. The tailor was an observant Jew. He was careful not to use linen thread. But once you have mass manufacturing, do you know what goes into the suit? Do you know what to check, where to check it, how to check? It was a major problem. He devised a method to identify it, and that's when it became a household word, Shatnez. This was in the 50s, but until it was unheard of. So until then, person, Eruv, not Eruv, people didn't even know what the word Eruv meant. You're permitted to carry on Shabbos. Did they know why? They didn't. As a result of that, it was a serious problem. But today, the world, Eruv is a household word. What do you carry? Person's not religious, it's irrelevant. The person, even, what do we carry? There's an Eruv in the community. So if you go out to wherever it is, I know some people, they go to Puerto Rico. And we're talking about Jews, but they know, they go and they make sure that they have an Eruv set up in the hotel that they should be able to carry in that area, outside the structure itself. And they make sure to have this. And it's important for them to have that there, wherever they go. Because they know Eruv is a household word. There's a responsa that was written by the Mariel Diskin in St. Louis, that a chief rabbi, he was always opposed to the Eruv. Why was he opposed to the Eruv? Because the Mariel Diskin, there was a person who was the chief rabbi in the 1800s. He sent a question to Mariel Diskin. Shulei Diskin was in Yerushalayim already. This was the original Brisker Rav. He was the Brisker Rav before the Beis HaLevi became the Brisker Rav. And he asked him, should he make an Eruv in St. Louis? It was a different neighborhood. So he says you shouldn't. Why? Because ultimately people will carry without an Eruv. That's why you should not make an Eruv. That's what the Mariel Diskin said. That's why the Eruv should not be made. So because of that responsive, which was written in the 1800s, in the 70s and 80s, he wouldn't allow an Eruv to be made. Because of the Mariel Diskin said, he said, but it's a different neighborhood. He said, if it's the same neighborhood, it's one thing. It's like you're in a different city. It's not the same city any longer. Right? It's like 15 miles from that original location. He was opposed. After the rabbi passed away, so the community, they made an Eruv. They made an Eruv afterwards. But initially, so long as he was alive, he was opposed because of this responsive from the Mariel Diskin, you should not have an Eruv. Even though Paris always had an Eruv, and Berlin always had an Eruv, the major cities had an Eruv on Shabbos. But whatever, because he said, that's why he was opposed to it. It's the same thing. So if you allow the person to use the murkav, even when eventually he's able to get a Esr, what is not a murkav, people say it's good enough. It's good enough. Linyan hadassim. Im yodea she murkavim ein litalem. I don't think we have that problem. Crossbred hadassim. The psulim hem kumasrog, same thing. It's not the species. Ach bistoma mashme achron shein lochosh, even though it's something one does not be concerned about. The stoma ein murkavim, because whoever heard of hadas to crossbreed it. Umasherotza shus Yaakov livsos magdelim beganos hasorim nechshash murkavim. The Shus Yaakov wanted to invalidate it because they would grow in gardens that the princes had, and they planted other species there, so they were growing close to one another, so maybe it was the equivalent of crossbreeding them. One does not be concerned. But factually, if you notice, there's a thing called hadas come from tzvas. They're called tzvas hadasim. You have seen them? Yeah, but the hadasim, which I don't know where they come from, the ones we have here, most of them, they have the stem is green and it's very pliable. The esrog that comes from the hadas from tzvas, it's a wooden stem. It's like a piece of wood. It's very sturdy, and the leaves are very attached very securely to it. It's a whole different. It's almost like a different species. I mean, it's beautiful compared to what the average hadas looks like in America. That it's a beautiful species. It's 3 on each level. They grow on the same level from top to bottom. You pay minimally $18 for 3 of them, or maybe more, because of that's the quality of the hadas. So it could be that was the original. That's the way that species originally looked. That was the original. You know, it's interesting. It's known that there was an article with the DNA of, the DNA of all Jews. Sephardic, Ashkenazic, Bukharin, wherever they're from, is identical. All DNA of Jews. The DNA of all blacks, American, Falashian, Ethiopian, whatever he is, identical DNA. Identical. Ramesh Feinstein held that the Falashis had to have gerus. The Ethiopians had to have a gerus. They were not original Jews. That's what he held. And it was proven from the DNA of the American black, the African, and the Ethiopian, identical DNA. In Russia, they have different republics. Each one has a different DNA. The DNA of the Yemenite Jew, is almost exactly the same as every other Jew, but it's slightly different. Why? Because among the Teimanim, that was the original. They are the pedigree of Jews. Because there was never any intermingling. Never, they have no converts ever. That is the purest DNA of the Yemenites. So therefore, the way the Yemenite Jew looks, everything, the Jews at Sinai, that's the way the Jews originally looked. The Yemenite Jews have beautiful features, most of them. They're, the Yemenites, because they never assimilated. Rape was almost unheard of. They never had pogroms over there. They were left alone. They were tucked away in Yemen since the Churban Abayis. That's the reason. That's the original pedigree, with all the characteristics. Let's see the Chovos HaLevavos.